What if the cruel laughter of wealthy customers could transform into stunned silence in the span of just 60 seconds? When Shanice Jackson quietly endured the mockery at Bluebird Diner for 8 grueling years, no one suspected the calloused hands that served their coffee concealed the touch of a concert pianist. Her manager sneered as the table of executives dared her to play the dusty grand piano in the corner, their wallets bulging with $100 bills wagered on her humiliation. The exhausted single mother of 3 had exactly one chance to silence their jeers or lose the job keeping her family from homelessness. But as her fingers touched those ivory keys, the diner fell silent. Nobody saw the famous music producer in the back booth, recording every magnificent note while tears streamed down his weathered face. Sometimes our deepest talents emerge when others try to bury us. The murmurs rippled through Bluebird Diner, like wind through autumn leaves as Shanice tucked the $20 bills into her apron pocket, her fingers still tingling from the ghost touch of ivory keys. The executives who had orchestrated her public challenge sat stunned, their expensive suits unable to mask their discomfort as they surrendered their wager with tight smiles and averted eyes. Shanice kept her gaze lowered, the familiar weight of her serving tray returning to hands that moments ago had coaxed magic from the neglected grand piano collecting dust in the corner. The scent of burned coffee and grease hung heavier than before as Mr. Harrington materialized beside her, his cologne sharp with citrus notes that did nothing to soften the venom in his whispered ultimatum about 8 years of service, without mentioning her talent and how she needed to get back to work or seek employment elsewhere. His words landed like slaps against her dignity, each syllable a reminder of her place in his estimation. In the corner booth, partially obscured by hanging plants and dim lighting, Maxwell Bennett observed the exchange, his weathered fingers scrawling observations in a leather notebook while his coffee cooled untouched. Shanice blinked rapidly, refusing to let moisture gather in her eyes as she balanced plates along her arm with practiced precision, years of serving experience battling against the crushing sensation in her chest. The diner that had been her financial lifeline for nearly a decade suddenly felt like a prison, its faded blue walls closing in with each order she delivered, each smile she forced, each moment she spent aware of the piano calling to her from across the room. Customers she had served faithfully for years now stared as though seeing her for the first time, their familiar faces transformed by newfound curiosity about the woman who had poured their coffee countless mornings. Sunlight streamed through smudged windows, illuminating dust particles that danced above the piano keys she yearned to touch again, her calloused fingertips remembering a language her body had been forced to forget. Between refilling water glasses and delivering club sandwiches, Shanice stole glances at the instrument that had momentarily liberated her soul, its mahogany surface gleaming like a portal to another life. The lunch rush engulfed her in a sea of demands and expectations while Mr. Harrington watched her every move from behind the register, his eyes narrowed with suspicion and something that looked remarkably like fear. His authority seemed threatened by her unexpected talent, his ownership of her time suddenly contested by possibilities beyond his control. In the corner, Maxwell Bennett continued his silent observation, occasionally catching her eye with a subtle nod that suggested recognition of something valuable others had overlooked for too long. The clock above the kitchen door ticked forward with agonizing slowness as Shanice moved between tables, carrying plates and burdens, while the memory of music struggled to survive in the suffocating reality of her daily existence. Friends, before we go further, may I ask a small favor? Please subscribe to our channel. It truly helps us keep bringing you these stories, and reaching 1,000 subscribers soon is so important for us to continue. We also love hearing from you. Tell us in the comments where you're watching from. It's always fascinating to see how our little storytelling circle is spreading across the world. And if you enjoyed the beginning, give this video a like, and let's share thoughts on the whole story together below. The lock on apartment 412 always stuck in humidity, forcing Shanice to balance her purse and tipping money. while wrestling with the stubborn door that finally gave way to reveal the familiar scent of lavender air freshener, battling against the persistent mustiness of water damage. Her grandmother Esther looked up from where she sat, mending school uniforms, her reading glasses perched at the edge of her nose. While beside her, on the worn plaid couch, 7-year-old twins Marcus and Maya sprawled asleep amid a nest of homework pages. The cramped living space doubled as kitchen and dining room, where mismatched chairs gathered around a folding table covered with a faded tablecloth hiding its numerous scratches and burns. 11-year-old Zora emerged from the bathroom, trailing the scent of dollar store shampoo, her eyes widening at the sight of her mother, whose exhaustion could not completely mask the lingering exhilaration still visible in her posture. The walls surrounding them wore layers of peeling wallpaper beneath an explosion of crayon drawings, school certificates, and family photos, creating a colourful patchwork that disguised the water stains spreading like continents across the ceiling. Shanice sank onto their salvaged ottoman, fingers automatically reaching to massage her swollen feet as she recounted the events at the diner, while Esther listened with narrowed eyes that missed nothing and lips pressed thin with protective anger. When Shanice described touching the piano keys again after so many years, Zora clutched her arm with sudden urgency, pleading for her mother to play their second-hand keyboard wedged between the refrigerator and wall, a garage sale find with 3 broken keys they could never afford to repair. The request unleashed a flood of memories Shanice had carefully dammed within herself for years, reluctantly revealing to her wide-eyed daughter how she had once walked the hallowed halls of Juilliard on full scholarship, her fingers destined for concert halls until love and tragedy rewrote her story. Her voice grew softer as she explained how their father Jacob had collapsed during her sophomore recital, how cancer had claimed him with merciless speed, leaving hospital bills that multiplied like desperate prayers, and 3 small children who needed stability more than they needed a mother, chasing musical dreams. The twins stirred at the sound of their father mentioned, as though his name carried power even in their sleep, while Esther wiped silent tears that escaped despite her determination to remain strong for her daughter, who had surrendered ambition for responsibility. Moonlight filtered through thin curtains, illuminating the makeshift beds arranged in corners and alcoves of every room, the careful organization of shared clothes in plastic bins, the artistic treasures covering walls instead of proper insulation, all testament to the fierce love that transformed their struggling space into the home that anchored them. Shanice finally yielded to her daughter, begging, settling before the keyboard as her grandmother and Zora watched her fingers hover over plastic keys, trembling with the weight of abandoned possibilities, and rediscovered yearning that threatened to crack open the careful shell of practicality she had constructed around her wounded heart. Morning sunlight spilled across the worn linoleum floor of Bluebird Diner as Shanice tied her apron with fingers still stiff from practicing late into the night on their broken keyboard, the memory of real piano keys haunting her sleep. The bell above the entrance chimed precisely at 7:15, admitting a familiar figure whose presence immediately commanded attention despite his understated appearance and quiet demeanor. Maxwell Bennett surveyed the half-empty establishment before sliding into booth 9, outside her usual section, then specifically requesting her service when Tanya approached with coffee pot in hand. Heart fluttering against her ribcage like a trapped bird, Shanice approached his table, clutching her notepad, while feeling the weight of curious stares from co-workers who whispered behind the counter about the previous day events. His warm smile carried none of the condescension she typically received from wealthy patrons as he ordered simple black coffee and wheat toast before placing a cream-colored business card on the table between them, its embossed gold lettering catching the morning light. The elegant card identified him as founder and executive producer of Harmony Records, a name even Shanice recognized from countless Grammy-winning albums and chart-topping artists whose music filled radio waves across the country. His voice remained low yet carried unmistakable authority as he described watching her performance yesterday, explaining how 30 years in the music industry had taught him to recognize raw talent that deserved proper cultivation and appreciation. The word audition floated between them, followed by specifics about their downtown studio and flexible scheduling that acknowledged her family responsibilities without her having mentioned them. Their conversation faltered when a shadow fell across the table, announcing Mr. Harrington's arrival. His entire demeanor transformed overnight, from threatening employer to fawning host, as recognition dawned regarding his customer identity. The manager who yesterday had threatened her job now placed a proprietary hand on her shoulder, voice booming with false pride, about always knowing she possessed extraordinary talent and how he had encouraged her musical gift from her first day at the diner. The transformation proved so dramatic that nearby servers froze mid-task, coffee pots suspended, and order pads forgotten as they witnessed this breathtaking display of opportunism. Throughout this performance, Maxwell Bennett's eyes never left Shanice's face, seeming to measure her reaction to the manager's sudden praise with quiet assessment that suggested he recognized the falsehood even without context. Other customers sensed the shift in atmosphere, conversations hushing, as attention gravitated toward their table, where power dynamics visibly realigned, like tectonic plates beneath their feet. As Mr. Harrington continued expounding on his role in discovering her talent, Maxwell interrupted with polite firmness to request privacy for their conversation, effectively dismissing the manager who retreated with obvious reluctance. The business card remained on the table between them, its golden promise gleaming against the scratched formica surface, while around them the ordinary diner transformed into something mysterious and charged with possibility, a crossroads where past and future collided with the force of destiny, finally demanding recognition after years of patient waiting. The gleaming glass tower of Harmony Records pierced the downtown skyline like a crystal spire, worlds away from the grease-spattered confines of Bluebird Diner, where Shanice had spent 8 years serving others while burying her own dreams. The marble-floored lobby echoed with her footsteps as security scrutinized her faded dress and scuffed shoes, reluctantly directing her toward private elevators accessed only by keycard or escort. Her reflection, fragmented across polished surfaces, revealed a woman both belonging and not belonging, talent wrapped in circumstances that had conspired to keep her invisible until yesterday. The receptionist on floor 23 greeted her with practiced warmth, offering espresso in delicate porcelain, while Shanice perched uncomfortably on furniture that probably cost more than 6 months of her rent. Minutes stretched like hours as self-doubt bloomed in her chest, whispering that she had misunderstood the invitation, or worse, that she might actually belong here but had sacrificed that right when choosing family over dreams years ago. Her purse clutched against her side contained 3 bus transfers and a photograph of her children tucked inside her wallet, anchors to reality amid this fantasy world of platinum records lining hallways and celebrities whose images casually adorned studio walls. Rising from the impossibly soft sofa, Shanice had nearly reached the elevator when music floated from partially open doors down the corridor, pulling her forward against rational thought toward its source. The studio space beyond revealed musicians arranging equipment around the most beautiful instrument she had ever seen. A concert grand piano gleaming ebony and ivory under perfectly positioned lights, its lid raised like wings prepared for flight. Something ancient and powerful awakened in her body as she approached without conscious decision. Musicians stepping aside with curious glances while her fingertips hovered above keys that seemed to inhale with anticipation. The first note she played resonated with such perfect clarity that conversations throughout the studio immediately ceased, technicians emerging from sound booths and artists pausing mid-sentence as Shanice surrendered completely to music that had waited patiently within her for precisely this moment. Time dissolved around cascading melodies that contained every untold story, every midnight tear, every moment of sacrifice and love that had shaped her journey, building toward crescendos that demanded recognition of worth beyond circumstance. When silence finally reclaimed the space, she opened eyes. She never remembered closing to find Maxwell Bennett watching her with quiet satisfaction while behind him stood speechless witnesses to transformation. His offer emerged without preamble, recording contract terms delivered with the same certainty with which he had first recognized her gift, but carrying unexpected weight in the requirement that she commence a 6-month promotional tour beginning next week. The studio suddenly seemed impossibly distant from apartment 412, where 3 children and an aging grandmother depended on her presence as completely as she depended on their love. The glittering opportunity before her, equally magnificent and terrible in its demand for immediate choice between worlds that had never been designed to coexist. Darkness had claimed the city by the time Shanice climbed the 4 flights to their apartment. Contract papers tucked inside her purse like foreign currency from a country she might never visit. The door opened before her key found the lock, revealing Esther with worry etched across features already worn by decades of stubborn survival. The grandmother who had been their foundation delivered news that cracked the already fragile architecture of possibility, explaining in her no-nonsense manner about doctors finding shadows on her recent scans and scheduling surgery that would leave her bedridden for weeks. Refrigerator hum and distant traffic formed a somber soundtrack. As this revelation collided with the recording contract waiting in her bag, 2 irreconcilable realities existing simultaneously, while 3 sleeping children breathed softly behind thin bedroom walls. Morning shift at the diner brought unwelcome clarity when regular customers approached with concerned expressions, sharing warnings about Maxwell Bennett they had heard from Mr. Harrington himself. The manager had apparently spent his evening calling loyal patrons with stories about Harmony Records exploiting vulnerable artists, citing fictional examples of single mothers abandoned penniless after signing predatory contracts. His desperate attempt to sabotage her opportunity revealed itself through concerned questions from people who genuinely believed they protected her from making a terrible mistake. Cell phone buzzing with messages from Maxwell, wondering about her decision, competed with Zora, asking about science project supplies she needed for school. Each notification another weight upon shoulders already bearing too much responsibility. Night found Shanice curled on their second-hand sofa while family slept around her. Apartment walls seeming to contract with each passing hour as impossible choices pressed against her consciousness like physical pain. Their small refrigerator contained exactly enough food for 4 more days until payday. School permission slips requiring fees she had already calculated to the penny waited on the kitchen counter. Beside prescription bottles, Esther needed refilled. Evidence of precarious balance maintained through constant vigilance and sacrifice. Moonlight painted silver rectangles across Maya mathematics homework featuring problems about calculating distance and time, unknowing mockery of the 6-month tour stretching 3,000 miles across concert venues she had once dreamed of playing. The keyboard stood silent accusation in the kitchen corner, its broken keys representing every compromise that had brought her to this moment of exquisite torture between duty and desire. Throughout endless night hours, Shanice moved between sleeping children, straightening blankets and memorizing peaceful expressions while calculating childcare costs against potential earnings, knowing whatever choice emerged with morning light would demand sacrifice beyond anything she had surrendered before. Mr. Harrington poison continued spreading through neighborhood gossip networks, even as Maxwell Bennett's reputation remained untarnished in music industry publications she researched on their shared family tablet, truth and manipulation becoming increasingly difficult to separate through exhaustion that blurred her vision and judgment equally. Wednesday lunch rush transformed Bluebird Diner into a cacophony of clattering plates and overlapping conversations as Shanice balanced trays while fighting headaches born from sleepless nights and impossible decisions. Her eyes remained fixed on tasks before her until familiar cologne announced Maxwell Bennett's arrival, his presence immediately shifting air currents throughout the bustling establishment. His expression registered concern at her appearance, the shadows beneath her eyes and trembling hands betraying exhaustion she could no longer conceal behind professional smiles. Sliding into her section, he observed her without immediate demands, waiting until she delivered orders to surrounding tables before requesting only water and 5 minutes of conversation she could scarcely spare. Sinking briefly onto the bench opposite him, Shanice found herself revealing the impossible equation of grandmother needing surgery, 3 children requiring supervision, and rent payments tolerating no interruption regardless of musical opportunity. Something shifted in his normally composed features as understanding dawned, followed by revelation of his own carefully protected truth about growing up shuttled between foster homes while his mother pursued promising music career across distant cities. His eyes reflected ancient pain as he described birthday cards arriving months late and phone calls promised but never received, culminating in the quiet acknowledgement that talent without family creates only hollow success despite platinum records and industry acclaim. Rather than pressing for immediate commitment to the tour, Maxwell presented alternative possibilities involving weekend studio sessions and local recordings that could accommodate both her family responsibilities and undeniable gift. Their conversation flowed with unexpected ease until Mr. Harrington materialized tableside, interrupting their exchange with dramatic announcement about featuring Shanice in upcoming diner advertisements across local newspapers and bus stations. His voice carried deliberately throughout the crowded space as he proclaimed a 30% pay increase effective immediately, attempting to bind her through financial incentive while establishing territorial claim before customers who served as witnesses. The salary figure he named exceeded anything previously offered during 8 years of loyal service, yet paled against the recording contract folded in her apron pocket. Surrounding booths fell silent as regular patrons sensed the power struggle unfolding before them, weighted significance transforming ordinary lunch service into battlefield where her future hung between opposing forces. Maxwell maintained composed silence during the interruption, neither challenging the manager directly nor betraying irritation through anything beyond slight tightening around his eyes. Between them, Shanice stood immobilized by competing possibilities suddenly manifest in physical form, each man representing divergent paths stretching before her like parallel universes demanding exclusive inhabitants. Sunlight, streaming through smudged windows, illuminated floating dust particles, swirling between these representatives of stability versus possibility, security versus risk, familiar limitation versus frightening freedom. The worn linoleum floor beneath her aching feet became decisive ground where next steps would determine which future claimed victory. While around them waitresses paused mid-task and customers delayed departures, collective breath held as though awaiting resolution to drama more compelling than any entertainment they had paid to witness. Thursday afternoon rain pelted against diner windows while Shanice wiped tables near closing time, discovering a phone message slip fallen behind the register counter bearing Maxwell's studio number and recording dates from 3 days prior. The crumpled paper revealed Mr. Harrington deliberate deception, confirmation of suspicions forming since the producer mentioned calls she never received. Confronting her manager in his cluttered office filled with faded sports memorabilia and accounting ledgers, Shanice watched his expression transform from denial to cold calculation when presented with evidence. His true nature emerged without pretense, as he reminded her that her grandmother Esther worked morning shift despite arthritis pain, while cousins Tanya and Jerome depended on weekend hours to cover community college tuition. Loyalty matters more than dreams, he insisted, revealing through bitter recollection how he once owned a promising restaurant until his head chef accepted opportunity with celebrity restaurateur, taking signature recipes and regular customers along with his departure. The implied threat hung between them in stale office air, punishment awaiting not just her but every family member, under his authority should she pursue opportunity beyond his control. Rain soaked her uniform during the bus ride home, where more problems awaited in the form of school notes requesting parent conferences regarding recent behavior changes. 11-year-old Zora had stopped completing homework assignments, while 7-year-old Marcus got into playground fights defending his mother against classmate comments about her being on television. Their tiny apartment vibrated with unspoken tension as Maya developed stomachaches before school. Esther struggled to hide increasing pain while cooking dinner, and Shanice attempted maintaining normalcy through mounting chaos. Night brought no relief as Shanice counted remaining sick days, calculated minimum hours needed for health insurance eligibility, and researched affordable childcare options that might accommodate recording schedules. Morning coffee spilled across permission slips when her trembling hands betrayed increasing exhaustion, symbolic destruction of carefully maintained order that had sustained them through years of precarious stability. The second-hand keyboard stood silent accusation in the corner, while calendar dates marched relentlessly forward. Studio sessions scheduled for Saturday, requiring decisions she felt increasingly unable to make. Pressure built within their walls as surely as water stains spread across their ceiling, unseen forces threatening structural integrity through continuous unchecked pressure. School counselors left voicemail messages expressing concern about children showing signs of emotional distress through classroom disruption and incomplete assignments, adding professional authority to worries already consuming her limited mental reserves. Between intercepted messages and manipulated opportunities, between family obligations and personal dreams, between economic necessity and artistic fulfillment, Shanice found herself compressed into increasingly smaller space where breathing itself became conscious effort requiring intentional focus. Something would break beneath this pressure, whether opportunity forever lost or security temporarily sacrificed, whether family stability or personal authenticity, leaving her standing at precipice where next step would determine whether she fell or finally learned to fly. Friday evening transformed Bluebird Diner into unrecognizable splendor, with tablecloths covering worn formica and string lights casting golden glow over special fundraiser event arranged by Mr. Harrington to showcase local business success. Wealthy patrons from Chamber of Commerce filled every booth, while television crews positioned cameras to capture community interest story, featuring the waitress with unexpected talent. Shanice stood uncomfortably beside the piano wearing the only formal dress she owned, faded black fabric last worn to her husband's funeral, now serving as performance attire while Mr. Harrington introduced her with exaggerated claims of discovering and nurturing her gift. Scattered applause prompted her reluctant movement toward the instrument as familiar weight of obligation pressed against her chest, responsibility to perform extending beyond entertainment toward sustaining employment for her entire family. The unexpected arrival of Maxwell Bennett created immediate stir among attendees, recognizing the famous producer whose purposeful stride carried him directly to center of the gathering rather than discreet corner booth. Clutched in his hand were documents passed immediately to uniformed officers entering behind him, their presence silencing conversations throughout the suddenly still space. Words like employee accounts and systematic theft echoed against decorative streamers, while security footage played on laptop screens revealing Mr. Harrington accessing payroll records after hours, manipulating timesheets, and creating elaborate system diverting percentage of server tips into separate accounts. Most damning evidence appeared on current security feed displayed on officer phones, showing the manager frantically shredding documents in his office after spotting Maxwell's entrance, confirmation of guilt transforming celebration into crime scene. Chaos erupted as servers gathered around screens displaying years of stolen wages, calculated spreadsheets revealing thousands diverted from people already struggling to survive on minimum wage. Amidst swirling confusion, Shanice remained motionless beside the piano, watching truth unfold with strange calm settling over her features until Mr. Harrington emerged from back office escorted by uniformed officers. Something uncoiled within her then, strength hidden beneath years of accommodation rising to surface as she stepped forward into spotlight meant for performance, but serving instead for confrontation. Her voice carried throughout suddenly silent room as she addressed years of manipulation, threats against family members, intercepted messages, and systematic exploitation masked as opportunity. Each accusation emerged clear and unwavering, while around her fellow employees nodded confirmation. unified witnesses to shared mistreatment finally exposed to public scrutiny. Television cameras originally positioned to capture heartwarming entertainment instead documented justice unfolding in real time, their presence ensuring accountability beyond private resolution. Throughout her testimony, Shanice stood straight-backed and clear-eyed. Performance anxiety transformed into righteous certainty that resonated more powerfully than any musical composition. Between uniformed authorities and wealthy witnesses, between exposed corruption and emerging justice, Shanice discovered voice more authentic than any musical expression, power that came not from keyboard mastery, but from finally claiming space she had earned through years of patient endurance and quiet dignity. Summer twilight bathed the renovated East Side Community Center in amber glow as crowds gathered for the inaugural benefit concert supporting arts education across underprivileged neighborhoods. The once crumbling building now stood transformed with gleaming hardwood floors and state-of-the-art acoustics while maintaining architectural elements honoring the 100-year-old structure that had served generations of local families. Harmony Foundation banners subtly acknowledged Maxwell Bennett financial support without overshadowing community ownership of space designed to nurture talent regardless of economic circumstance. The attached cafe bustled with activity as former Bluebird Diner employees served refreshments in an environment where fair wages and profit-sharing replaced exploitation, their familiar faces now brightened by dignified working conditions under the watchful management of Esther, whose health had improved alongside their collective circumstances. Children from local schools filled front rows wearing T-shirts proclaiming future musicians, artists, dreamers, their eager faces representing exactly who would benefit from scholarship funds raised through ticket sales and corporate sponsorships. Backstage, Shanice adjusted her concert gown of deep purple silk, fingers steady with newfound confidence as she reviewed sheet music for original compositions that had earned surprising radio play and streaming popularity over past weeks. Stepping onto the stage amid welcoming applause, she allowed herself brief survey of the audience before settling at the magnificent grand piano positioned beneath subtle spotlights. Among the crowd, she spotted familiar faces, including the very executives who once mockingly challenged her to play for their entertainment, their expressions now carrying respectful anticipation rather than cruel amusement as they occupied ordinary seats rather than privileged positions. The hall fell silent as her fingers touched keys with deliberate gentleness. Beginning melody that carried echoes of struggle transformed through perseverance into something transcendent yet accessible. Throughout her 40-minute performance, Shanice moved between classical pieces and original compositions while screens displayed images of neighborhood children discovering instruments through programs her music now funded. The concert represented perfect balance between artistic excellence and community connection, sophisticated enough to impress industry professionals, yet welcoming to families who had never before attended formal musical events. From her position at the piano, Shanice could glimpse her children watching proudly from side stage, where Zora already showed interest in sound engineering, while the twins distributed programs with earnest professionalism. Maxwell observed from production booth, his vision of talent recognized and nurtured without exploitation, proving successful beyond industry metrics through genuine community impact. The renovated center, with its sliding scale admission policies and scholarship opportunities, embodied bridge between separate worlds Shanice had once struggled to reconcile, creating space where artistic achievement and family responsibility strengthened rather than opposed each other. Through music that night flowed unspoken acknowledgement that justice sometimes arrives unexpectedly, carrying transformation beyond simple reversal of fortune toward creation of entirely new possibilities that lift many rather than elevating one at the expense of others. Autumn sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows of the Morgan Music Academy, where Shanice guided young fingers across piano keys with patient encouragement, her teaching schedule carefully arranged to end before school dismissal each day. 12 months of strategic choices had manifested balance once thought impossible, as her second album climbed streaming charts while allowing her to attend every soccer game and science fair, without sacrificing artistic integrity or professional momentum. Their new home in a quiet neighborhood balanced modest comfort with thoughtful design, featuring a music room where students from diverse backgrounds received scholarship lessons each weekend. The living room wall told their story through careful arrangement where her music award stood beside Zora debate team trophy, Marcus improved grade certificate, and Maya artwork selected for citywide exhibition, visual testament to family rising together rather than individual success at collective expense. Reporters frequently requested interviews about her unusual career trajectory, particularly following the documentary chronicling the Bluebird Diner scandal that resulted in complete ownership transfer to employee cooperative now thriving under new management. During these conversations, Shanice consistently emphasized that genuine success must create wider pathways rather than singular exceptions, using her platform to highlight systemic barriers requiring institutional change rather than extraordinary individual effort. Her words carried authority backed by action through scholarship foundations serving talented youth facing financial obstacles, community center programs employing local artists as instructors, and policy advocacy, alongside Maxwell Bennett, whose Harmony Foundation now partnered with education initiatives across multiple cities. The most meaningful measure of transformation revealed itself Tuesday afternoons when Shanice brought her keyboard to Mercy Hospital Oncology Wing, where Esther received maintenance treatments following successful surgery and recovery. The grandmother who had sustained their family through countless challenges now sat proudly watching her daughter and grandchildren share music and flowers with patients facing their own battles against circumstance and illness. Throughout the hospital, corridors floated melodies carrying hope without false promises, acknowledgement of pain without surrender to despair, invitation toward healing that began with being truly seen by others. Between elegant concert halls and sterile hospital rooms, between prestigious academies and humble community centers, between achievement recognized through industry accolades and success measured through family stability, Shanice had discovered path forward that honored both extraordinary gift and ordinary connections sustaining her through darkest times. Children who once feared abandonment now confidently pursued their own interests, knowing solid foundations supported their exploration, while audiences who celebrated her music understood each composition carried wisdom, earned through choosing connection when easier paths beckoned. The fingers that once served coffee while hiding their true capability now moved freely between keyboard creating beauty, hands holding children through nightmares, arms embracing grandmother during treatments, existence undivided by false choice between gift and responsibility, talent finally recognized, while relationships remained uncompromised.